to talk to you about just a couple things just to get everybody warmed up for the day. I'm really excited to see how this goes. This is kind of our first experiment in holding a demo day. As you know, for pilot program cohort 1, we jumped into a Twitter Spaces and interviewed all the teams after they finished their projects. But this season, we thought it would be fun to start these demo days to really give a venue for projects to share what they did with the community and have more open, even technical discussions about what they're building, how they build, what they're going to do next. And if this goes well, I think we can expand it with the next cohort. And you'll see we love inviting people from past cohorts back to share their current progress and what they're working on now. So we'll hear a bit of that too. But for today's talk, I wanted to think about that next cohort, so pilot program 3, and think about some ideas for those of you who are building things, what you might build next, or different ideas built on Tableland that I'd love to see projects exploring and noodling on. And then I think we'll jump into to some excellent projects that have already been built. So Tableland is really where developers go to solve what can't be solved in smart contracts alone. So specifically with data, we're seeing so many projects that have complex needs around how the data is stored, the structure of that data, the query of that data, and building it into applications and experiences. And we've seen this really awesome traction in the pilot program, and the breadth of use cases that these projects are building is so exciting. And I think we could, I definitely encourage those of you that didn't look at pilot program 1 to go back and look at the snapshot votes and the demos of these projects. But really, it's been just so exciting seeing how this has flourished and how many unexpected ideas showed up for pilot program 2, and really working with them to push those ideas out over just a really quick few weeks. And I hope the teams that are all here, I hope they really feel our excitement and how much we want to help support them even past the pilot program and help them find ways to build these things and keep innovating. And so we really think of the pilot program as a long-term experience, even though the actual cohort works together over just a few weeks to bring these ideas to life. So all that said, I'm gonna seed some ideas, and I think that these could be cool ideas for teams that are looking for what to build if they want to be part of the pilot program 3. Or maybe some of these are just ideas that could be integrated into existing pilot program projects, or maybe you're just looking for a weekend hack and you want to think of ways to use and build and learn with Tableland. So these are just ideas that have excited me, and like I said, trying to get your blood warm for the morning. So I'm going to go through 5 different ideas I've been thinking about and kind of explain some ways that it could come together on Tableland and what the benefits would be. So the first one is protocol glue. The way that we've been thinking about this at Tableland is that every protocol out there needs a database, and the use cases that can be built on other protocols really expand quickly when they're paired with a on-chain native protocol like Tableland. And so 2 really great examples that we work with quite a bit are oracles and data storage. So I think there's a really big opportunity for projects outside of our core team to start exploring and experimenting and creating things on top of these protocols that use Tableland to make them do something more. So that could be creating standardized schemas for dealing with data inputs from Filecoin. So the way I think about this a lot is ontological mapping. So how do you take CIDs on IPFS, map them to storage deals on Filecoin, and make that all searchable and indexable in a way that projects can build on top of? But even more than that, I think there's some really cool specific use cases. So in Filecoin, in the bottom row here, Filecoin has been really focused on how to build data DAOs, how to build collectives of individuals or organizations that are curating and hosting data together on Filecoin. And I think that data DAOs actually get a lot more exciting if we add relational data on top of those storage deals, so that you can build all sorts of neat things around the ACL in Tableland to update indexes of data that's stored, but also create tooling on top of the storage pipeline. So what data is queued to be stored, who are the individuals in the DAO that are going through migrating that data to Filecoin, and what are the final deals, and then actually also building all sorts of tooling on top of deal expiration, deal migrations, deal replications, things like that. And for oracles, the top row, I've been thinking a lot about dynamic NFTs. So a use case that's really been explored pretty deeply by Chainlink. I think you can actually go quite a bit further if you combine the work in Chainlink with Tableland. So specifically using Chainlink to bring real world data like sports results and team performance into NFTs, but also then persisting some of those outputs in the tables and into tables in Tableland in a way that can drive rich metadata for the NFTs that you're looking at in your marketplace or your wallet. And I think you can just do so much more with those two together. So the second one that I've been really excited about is using ENS. So specifically, I think this pairs really nicely with data DAOs, but it doesn't have to be a data DAO. But using ENS to create essentially databases over Tableland, and by databases I mean highly structured relational tables that are together creating rich data sets. And I think that we could be building these into data DAOs where data DAOs are curating specific types of data together, and potentially the DAO members are loose collectives of editors or contributors that are building these things. And so the example I have on the left is census data. And there are all different types of census data that come from, like United States and many other countries. A lot of times they come in a lot of different forms. There's work to standardize that. There's work to make that available to projects to consume and build cool things around. Curating that data and doing the work to standardize it and make it usable actually is a really great objective of a data DAO. And so Tableland could be a really great place for bringing this data to life, or bringing data sets like that to life. And then if we actually think about it as DAOs or loosely as DAOs doing this with standards and schemas on top of Tableland, we can actually think of all those DAOs or all those projects working together to push interoperability of data in ways that we could build tooling and UIs on top of the SQL databases that are reusable across all projects that are curating interesting data sets. And what I think is really cool about doing this with ENS is that ENS is such a flexible namespacing protocol. And so when you think about the key difference between just a bunch of tables on Tableland and actually calling it a database, it's really this namespacing concept is feature number one. And so I've done a little bit of experimentation with this, and we have a ticket on GitHub where we're talking about doing some specific work experimenting using ENS in the CLI, and you can jump in and take a look at that. But I think there's so much more to do. So ENS is also super flexible about resolvers and all the different sort of controllers and different pieces for how you resolve an ENS name and then display what the metadata is underneath it. And so actually here I did just a quick hack where I was using the text records to create a dynamic key value store of all the tables that are part of this namespace. So this namespace particularly being a subdomain on ENS. So if you imagine this actually being expanded out, you could have a data DAO or even a data DAO factory that has a single namespace on ENS that creates a lot of subdomains that end up being databases of thematic data sets. And then it could use text records the way that I do here, or actually you could write your own resolvers to do really custom and interesting things. And I'd love to see some hacking and experimentation there, because we'll probably explore this in a way to make it available for specific users and use cases. But I think that there'll be a lot more that is potentially interesting in that space. So, all right, third area that I think we could be doing a lot of really cool work right now is around executable NFT frameworks. So specifically, like, how do new projects come along and build an executable NFT in a way that it will be beautiful and interesting and good user experience in wallets and in marketplaces and any place else, galleries and other places where NFTs are showing up. And I think to do that from scratch is actually pretty complicated still. And there's some work, obviously, from Backpack and projects in the Solana ecosystem that have been pushing this really quickly. But I think there's some pretty lightweight work to do around just basic frameworks that make this simple and straightforward. How do you launch a web application that is in the constraints of an NFT based on dimensions and actually can be displayed in marketplaces and handles some of the basic concepts of like Wallet Connect. So Wallet Connect for an executable NFT is going to work great any place that you're running that NFT, except for when it's running in iframes, say on OpenSea, where Wallet Connect is not going to be available. So how do you have a framework that detects those moments and can guide the user around opening that application elsewhere so that they can then connect to it and do more once their wallet is part of the application, or their wallet address is within the application. And then also just how do you launch static apps? So once you've built your app, how do you launch a static version of it and have it hosted on IPFS and get that into your smart contract to reference that app and be able to display the right app for every NFT? Just some simple frameworks to do that. Yeah, and so like I said, there's just lots of great little simple things that we could do around building, a React or a Vue-based framework, or even just focusing on some of the front-end only styling frameworks that would allow us to get really far here. All right, this is one that I spoke about briefly at Convergence a few weeks ago, and I think it overlaps with the data DAOs and even the Filecoin data storage, but actually creating AI summoners. I think it probably is early days to go very far with this, but I think we could be exploring some really exciting things already around how you can create models that are owned by groups of people and actually open to the public. And this is something that's obviously been explored in Web 2 platforms, but I think doing it in a Web 3 native way is really exciting. And Tableland actually is a really perfect tool for getting a lot of this done. So how do you store the inputs to models? How do you store the parameters to models? How do you store checkpoints? How do you store final versions and do versioning? And then also, how do you distribute the training of those models and doing just simple things like back propagation or collaboration around the different steps of the workflow in a way that could scale or potentially be incentivized even. So I think you could actually build in like really exciting new ways to train scalable models and incentivize trusted entities within your ecosystem to do that work and get the outputs out to the public. And I think that a lot of these actually, I don't mention NFTs explicitly, but this is a great one where obviously there's huge potential for NFTs around the digital ownership concept, whether the models themselves drive NFTs or can basically become factories for new NFTs or are just themselves owned as NFTs. And so I think all of these use cases overlap NFTs, even though I don't say it explicitly. And then I think this is my final idea just to share with you all. And this is one that we've talked about a lot internally because we've built a peer-to-peer database before. And I think with Tableland, there's an opportunity to build a peer-to-peer database plus. So basically, how do we take, and I think the really exciting door that's opening here is using SQLite to do it. And there's some work that we need to do on our protocol that would make this way more scalable. That is future work, but it's stuff that we're definitely already have on our minds for where we're going. But at the base, in the basic deployment that I'd imagine now, we could use a tool like what VLCN has put out recently around a basic CRDT plugin for SQLite. Use that kind of approach directly in the browser so that you could have an application built on a data state where a lot of different people that have access to that data state can be contributing to changes in the state and synchronizing it without any blockchain, without any back end. And then just the final piece is like, how do you, once you have a state that is has diverged enough from the last sort of base state, you could push all those changes to something like Tableland, where then anybody in the future could get caught up quickly, or if somebody is unable to connect to the pool of peers that are collaborating directly on the state, they could still read updates and catch up to reasonably far along versions of that database. So yeah, really basically a peer-to-peer database that anchors or syncs to Tableland. And Yeah, you could use fully, you could basically wrap this mostly in a custom ACL that allows peers to collaborate and either elect or just allow anybody that's in the ACL to be sending those anchor points. And then anybody in the future could read those anchor points or even just follow along directly with those anchor points. So anyway, I hope those ideas were interesting to you. Like I said, I just wanted to get people's brains racing on where this all goes next. And now look at all these projects that were built over this last pilot program and think about where do they iterate to, where do they go to, and how do they weave into some of the big ideas for how the Web3 ecosystem around data is coming together. I do want to invite you all to check out our webpage for the pilot program. It's still, all the language is still for the current pilot program, but we have rolling applications always. And so you can use that form if you're interested in signing up for the next pilot program. That will kick off in January, and we'll be updating the webpage with the language for that shortly, but feel free to drop your application in there already and we'll take a look, and we'd love to talk to you.